Hi, I'm Krishna from the Things Industries, and this is the Things Indoor Gateway. The Things Indoor Gateway sports a sleek, compact, elegant design. The front panel is completely blank in order for you to add your own logos, initials, completely customize it to your liking. On one side you have the setup button for the Wi-Fi and the LED indicator, and on the other side you have the USB-C slot and the reset button. On the back, my thumb is hiding the location where the secret Wi-Fi password is printed, which you will need to claim the gateway. To connect the power plug, press the button at the back to remove the placeholder and insert the plug in its place. Make sure to choose the power plug that's appropriate for your region. Alternatively, you can connect a USB-C cable, which is then connected to a laptop, a power adapter, or in this case, a power bank. The Things Indoor Gateway is added to the Things stack by a process called gateway claiming. To claim your gateway, you would require the EUI of the gateway. If you flip the gateway to the back panel below the QR code, you have a 12-digit value. Take this value and insert FFFE before the last 6 digits and you will have the 16-digit EUI. In addition, you also need a Wi-Fi access point to which the gateway connects to, because the Things Indoor Gateway works via Wi-Fi. You can use open networks, but the Things Indoor Gateway does not support enterprise Wi-Fi. Also, you would need an account in the ThingsStack Cloud or the ThingsStack Community Edition. To connect the Things Indoor Gateway to the ThingsStack Community Edition, head over to console.cloud.things.network. Choose the appropriate cluster from the list provided here. In this case, I'm choosing the EU1 cluster and log in with the Things ID. Upon login, you reach the console main screen. You need to head over to the Gateways tab and click on the Claim Gateway option. Make sure to not use the Add Gateway option. Enter the required fields below. In this case, it's the EUI and the claim authentication code, which is printed on the back of your gateway. Choose a unique descriptive ID for your gateway. And finally, the frequency plan from the list provided here. I'm choosing the EU plan in this case, and I click Claim Gateway, and voila, that's it. Your gateway is claimed and registered and is configured. Your gateway is now configured in the background to point to eu1.cloud.things.network. And finally, you can see all the live data of the gateway from the Live Data Activities tab. The ThingsStack Cloud customers follow the exact same process, except you head over to console.cloud.things.industries and enter your tenant ID. In this case, I'm just going to choose an example of the TTI tenant ID and choose the EU1 cluster. From this point on, the process is exactly the same as I showed you right now. On your computer, laptop, or smartphone, click on the Wi-Fi icon and look for an SSID with the mini-hub hyphen the last 6 digits of your gateway EUI and enter the password. This password is the same as the one you used to claim the gateway on the ThingsStack. In a web browser, head over to 192.168.4.1. The list of Wi-Fi SSIDs seen by your gateway is listed here. If your network or SSID is not listed by the gateway, you can add that manually, as I'm doing right now. And since I'm using a secure network, I will also add its password. Please note that this is not the password of the gateway, but the password of the Wi-Fi network to which the gateway should connect to. Click on Save and Reboot to apply these settings. At the bottom of this page, you have some information about the gateway which you might find useful. If your configuration is correct, your gateway will blink red a few times and then green and then settle on a solid green connection. When this happens, the gateway connects to the ThingsStack. Upon connecting to the ThingsStack, the gateway sends a first status message in which it prints some information about the firmware, the version, and the package of the gateway. You can see this in the Live Data tab of the console. So now you may be wondering why this process is so easy. Let's look under the hood to understand the technology behind the Things Indoor Gateway. The key driver of the ThingsStack is the Lora Basic Station protocol. The Lora Basic Station protocol is a specification for a piece of software that's inside the LoRaWAN gateway, which connects to the network server, in this case, the Think stack. It consists of two separate parts, the CUPS and the LNS. The CUPS is the first point of contact for the gateway when it starts up, sends the LNS credentials to the gateway, and it optionally updates the firmware. The LNS, on the other hand, is the actual endpoint where the traffic is sent to. It also sends the radio configuration for the gateway. The Think stack supports both protocols out of the box. When the Things Indoor Gateway starts up, it sends a CUPS request to the CUPS server and in return gets the credentials of the LNS server. The TTIG uses these credentials to connect to the LNS server, receive the radio information, and start transmitting traffic. Users of the Think stack can manipulate both the CUPS and the LNS parameters of each gateway using the Think stack via the console, the CLI, or the API. This allows the Things Indoor Gateway to be completely remotely managed without ever needing to physically access the gateway. Now let's see how we can leverage the Think stack and the Lora Basic Station protocol to do some basic gateway actions. Changing the frequency plan of a gateway is extremely easy thanks to the Think stack and Lora Basic Station. Please note that this is just an example and EU 868 gateways are not compatible with US or AU frequencies. To change the frequency plan, click on the General Settings tab, head over to the LoRaWAN options, and choose the frequency plan option. A list of frequency plans supported by the Think stack is presented in this dropdown. You can choose the frequency plan that's applicable to you. For this example, I'm just going to set the FSP one of the AU region and click on Save Changes. Now the gateway just has to reconnect for this new frequency plan to be applied. Please note once again that this is an example and you should not be setting an AU frequency plan for an EU gateway. The Things Indoor Gateway can be migrated from the ThinkStack Community Edition to the ThinkStack Cloud directly from the server side without needing physical access to the gateway. To do this, just log into your ThinkStack Cloud account and claim the gateway as per the usual process. Now, to prevent the gateway from automatically connecting to the ThinkStack Community Edition, you will have to do one of two things. Either invalidate the API keys used on the gateway, or in this case, as I'm doing, delete it from the ThinkStack Community Edition. If you have physical access to the gateway, power cycle it, or allow for up to 24 hours for the gateway to automatically connect to the configuration server, pick up the new configuration, and connect to the ThinkStack Cloud. Thanks for listening, and if you would like to know more, head over to thethingsindustries.com/docs. That's thethingsindustries.com/docs, the single place for all our documentation. If you hang around, there's an FAQ where I will answer questions live. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I hope you can hear me. So this is the live FAQ session where when you have questions, I can answer them. So head over to the chat and ask your questions and I will answer them in real time. So before we begin, we can also just take a look at our latest 3.14.1 release, where we just released a bunch of fixes for gateway claiming. We translated our entire console, almost the entire console to Japanese, and we also have a few bug fixes. So those who are not aware of this, please head out to our releases page and make sure you update your deployments with 3.14.1 release. Okay, so the first question someone asked is, yes, this video will be available on YouTube, so you can definitely look at it online when you have time. So go head over to the chat button and ask your questions. So I have a set of questions that I have sourced from the forum and some customers and people asking me these questions. I'm just going to run through them. And in the meantime, please keep asking your questions. I will keep an eye on the chat. And if you have your questions, I will answer them also. So the first question is, how do I connect my Things Indoor Gateway to my private LNS? A lot of people are asking these questions because the Things Indoor Gateway is a Lora Basic Station gateway. It's very easy to connect it to a private network. When you so the first step is you have to claim the gateway either in the ThinkStack Cloud or in the ThinkStack Community Edition. Make sure that the gateway is claimed in one of the two instances. And once the gateway is claimed, all you have to do is go to the go to the gateway settings page and look for the Lora basic station LNS key. And you have to set, okay, so you have to set two parameters. First would be the gateway server address. This is synonymous with the LNS address or the LNS URI for Lora basic station. You have to first set that and then set the LNS key. So on your private instance, which could be a ThinkStack open source edition that you're running, or a different ThinkStack edition that's not cloud or community, all you have to do is register the gateway there separately, get the URI of the endpoint to which you want to connect to. This is usually the LNS endpoint with the port 8887 if you're using TLS, or the port 1887 if you're using plain text. Get the address with the port number, and you create an API key if you want a secure connection, and add that API key to the Lora basic station LNS key field, update, reconnect your gateway, and the gateway will connect to your private instance. So sometimes it may be that the gateway still has an active connection to the ThinkStack cloud. If you want to force that to reset and connect to your private instance, just go to the LNS API key in your ThinkStack cloud or ThinkStack community edition and just invalidate the API key, delete it, or just change the rights on the API key. And that will force the gateway to connect to your private instance. Okay, so another commonly asked question is the cups and the LNS addresses, because we have so many clusters. What's the cups address? What's the LNS address? So the ThinkStack Cloud and the ThinkStack Community Edition, actually all versions of the ThinkStack support cups and LNS by default. So the way we do that in software is that we use the same address of the stack, but we change the ports. So for example, if you want to connect your gateway to the EU1 cluster of the community network, all you have to do is take eu1.cloud.things.network, that's the entry point. If you enter that in a browser, that goes to your console. So instead, you take that address, and if you use port 443, you automatically get the cups server. And if you use the port 8887, you get the LNS server with TLS, and 1887 for the LNS server without TLS. But note that in our production deployments, we do not allow connecting gateways, Lora basic station gateways, without authentication. So you will have to use the 8887 port. And every cluster, whether it's the ThinkStack Cloud or the ThinkStack Community Edition, has its own cups and LNS addresses. So if you want to connect, you can also choose to have cups in one cluster and the LNS in another cluster. That's super easy to do. It's the same process as I described right now, where you just change the gateway server address parameter in the general settings. The concept is exactly the same. So each cluster has its own cups, its own LNS server. So all you have to do is to choose which one you want. If you're using the claiming process from one of these clusters, so if you log into the console in EU1 and you claim the TTIG in that cluster, then it automatically gets configured to that. And you can also go claim it in another cluster if you want to keep the gateway closer to the, or keep the server closer to the gateway. For example, if you're using it in North America or using it in AU, for example. Okay, so another commonly asked question is the rights and the API keys. What's important with the basic station protocol is that it supports a bunch of authentication modes, and the ThinkStack Cloud and the ThinkStack Community Edition, being production servers or being servers available to the public, we always enforce some form of authentication. So which means that you will need so basic station supports two types of authentication. One is with client-side TLS, so this is MTLS. The other one would be the out token based authentication. So ThinkStack currently supports the out token based authentication, which means that you will need to enter a token in the HTTP header, which has an authorization header. The way you do it is that in the ThinkStack, all out tokens are API keys. So you generate an API key, you need to provide a right for that API key and use that API key in your requests. So for cups, you have three rights, which is to edit the basic gateway settings, retrieve certain secrets, which is the LNS key. So the cups server will fetch the LNS secrets. So it requires the right to read those secrets. So you need the rights to retrieve secrets, the right to view some settings. And when the gateway connects, it sends a few important fields, such as the package, the version, the model in the first request when the request is successful. So the cup server writes that to the gateway entity, and it requires rights to write to the gateway entity. So those are the three values that the three writes that the cups server requires. On the LNS, it's just a regular gateway. So you require a link write for the gateway to link to the gateway server and forward traffic. All right. So another common question is, I have some gateways in V2, or I have some gateways in the ThinkStack Community Edition. How do I migrate them? So in the beginning of this video, I showed you a simple process to migrate between the ThinkStack Community Edition and ThinkStack Cloud clusters. So if you want to migrate the gateway from the Things Network V2, which we highly, highly recommend, since at the end of this year, we're going to shut down V2, the process is really simple. All you have to do is, if you have the EUI and the key of your, and the Wi-Fi passwords, which is the secret key of your gateway, you can just go to one of the clusters, ThinkStack Community Edition or the ThinkStack Cloud, claim the gateway, wait for 24 hours if you don't have physical access to the gateway, or if you can access the gateway, just power cycle it. It picks up the new configuration and it just migrates to the ThinkStack Cloud or the ThinkStack Community Edition. So please be aware that by the end of, once again, by the end of this year, in December, we are going to shut down the Things Network V2. So please make sure to migrate your gateways to the ThinkStack Community Edition or the ThinkStack Cloud. All right, so there is also a bit of confusion between claiming and adding gateways. So where does this confusion come from? The idea is that we have a process for adding gateways, which is generally meant for gateways that are not basic station, and also basic station gateways that are not the Things Indoor gateways. So the Things Indoor gateway, since it's a sort of a special product, we have certain things in place where it's very easy for you to one-click claim, configure, set up the gateway, and it's a feature that's on top of existing gateways. So if you by mistake add your gateway from the latest release, that is 3.14.1, if you go to the console and try to add a TTIC, it will give you an error or like a warning message saying you're trying to add a TTIC, please try to claim it. Now, in the past, if you added a TTIC by mistake, it's really simple. Again, with the latest release, we have an option for you to claim a TTIC that already exists. So you just have to go to the thingsindustries.com/docs, look for the Things Indoor Gateway, and there's a process to claim it. It's just a simple click claim, enter the fields, and you can claim a gateway that's already been registered. So we've worked this into the system now, which means that your gateways which you had added before, which were not connecting, you just have to go claim it, use the same EUI, same ID, enter the claim authentication code, and your gateways get claimed, automatically set up in the background, power cycle them, and it starts connecting. All right, so another commonly asked question, why doesn't the TTIC send periodic status messages? So the question is, the TTIC connects, it sends a status message, and after which it doesn't send any more messages. It only sends uplinks, downlinks, LoRaWAN traffic, but not status messages. So this is not specific to the Things Indoor Gateway. This is actually something that's a part of the LoRa Basic Station protocol. If you go to the LoRa Basic Station repository on GitHub, this is a commonly discussed issue, and the authors of the LoRa Basic Station protocol have taken your feedback, and in the next releases there will be an option to send a status message. We are not yet sure when that would be, but the idea is the thing is that the Things Indoor Gateway, which follows the LoRa Basic Station protocol, does not support any periodic status message because the protocol underneath does not support it. However, with LoRa Basic Station and with the TTIC, there is a way for us to create a status message, since the Basic Station protocol supports sending a formatted JSON message via a pipe. We haven't yet looked into that because we don't want to build something custom for the Things Indoor Gateway, which may not be in the LoRa Basic Station protocol. So we're just waiting for the protocol itself to adapt a status message. And once that is there, we will, of course, support it in the Things Indoor Gateway also. All right, so yes, a common question also is claiming doesn't work, what do I do? So this happened quite often when we introduced the gateway claiming process. There were a few bugs which we have fixed. And right now, if your claiming doesn't work, it could be one of two reasons. One is that your gateway is not accessible and the Wi-Fi has a problem. The other thing is that for really old gateways, which were sold which were sold before 2019, before this year and last year, the Wi-Fi, the firmware version of the gateway is behind a few versions of the current latest, which means that your gateway should at least be version 203 or above to be able to connect to the thing stack, because there's a small bug fix there which was fixed in 203. So all gateways with the TTICs have only two firmware versions, 200, which is the older one, and 204, which is the latest one. So when you claim a gateway, the thing stack automatically sends down the new firmware and configures it to the gateway. It's possible that when the gateway first wakes up after this update, or after you claim the gateway, the firmware might not have been served to the gateway. So if the gateway tries to connect to the thing stack with the older firmware, due to this bug that I told you about, the gateway will not be able to connect, and you will have this blinking light. So the simplest fix is, first of all, to find out what firmware your gateway is running. This is quite easy. Just connect to the Wi-Fi endpoint, the endpoint where you use to configure the Wi-Fi for the gateway. And at the bottom of the list, you have the EUI, the claim authentication code, the serial number, the manufacturing date, etc. And at the bottom of that list, you will also have the firmware version. If that firmware is 200, then it will require an update. And this is quite easy also. Go back to the thing stack and claim your gateway again. So when you claim the gateway with the same ID, same EUI, it just updates a few parameters and triggers another firmware update. So when you power cycle this gateway now, it will pick up the new firmware, hopefully, and then it can connect to the thing stack. So first of all, find out what firmware is running on your gateway quite easily using the Wi-Fi access point. And if the firmware is old, just claim the gateway again. We have a system where it serves the new firmware. It serves the firmware a second time, and your gateway should be able to connect. Okay, so we have a question which is gateway is blinking green 1.4 per second, and it does not connect to TTN. My Wi-Fi backhaul is fine. Running other services. Yeah, so the issue could be one of two. As I said, if your Wi-Fi connection is fine and the gateway is blinking 1/4 of a second, it could mean that it's an older gateway whose firmware has not been updated. So please claim the gateway once again from the console where you claimed it. And when you claim a gateway, we try to send the firmware down to the gateway. The gateway picks up the firmware and it should connect again. Okay, so another question that's not related to the TTIG is, at the moment, I have a DIY Arduino gateway single channel. Can I migrate it to the new console, or do I need to update the Arduino code to get it working? Okay, so before I answer that, single channel gateways are not LoRaWAN compliant. So back in the day when LoRaWAN was starting out, single channel gateways were the only things available because 8-channel gateways were not popular at the time and not easy to get. But with the new advent of multiple gateway vendors selling gateways at different price ranges, for example, the Things Indoor gateway is like $70, $80, euros, I think. It shouldn't be too difficult to get your hands on an 8-channel gateway. So we do not recommend using single-channel gateways since they are not LoRaWAN compliant. And even if you manage to get them connected, you will then in the future have issues regarding uplinks, downlinks, timing, etc. If you head over to the forum, there's a couple of posts on what you can do if you have a single-channel gateway. The recommendation is not to use single-channel gateways, but to use standard 8-channel, 16, 64. I don't think anybody uses 64, but yeah, 8 or 16-channel gateways. Okay, any more questions? Let's see. So I keep getting commonly asked about the range of the TTIG, how far can it cover? So the Things Indoor Gateway, as the name suggests, is an indoor gateway. So it has a range of about, we have tested it about 200 meters internally, depending on the situations. But we know some community members who have deployed it outside with a small fixed to the antenna, and it gives you a range of 2-3 kilometers. So just to be clear, the Things Indoor Gateway is an indoor gateway. So it's meant for indoor usage, for small range usages. And you can, if you have a large area or a large warehouse where you need to put a gateway, I would recommend just buying a few TTICs because they're kind of inexpensive, and trying to cover the range. So for anybody who's come to our conferences, you know that we have conferences in giant conference rooms, and we use about 5 or 6 gateways in that region to provide coverage for the entire conference. So it covers a lot of, it's a small area gateway. It's an indoor gateway, so please make sure to account for that when you are looking to buy this gateway. I have a couple of generic LoRa basic station questions that are commonly asked in the forum, which is about remote shell and remote commands. So the LoRa basic station protocol has an option where from the server side you can control some parameters on the gateway by sending remote commands, or you can also enter an interactive shell into the gateway. This is not possible on the Things Indoor Gateway because there is no OS. There is a way for you to kind of fake a shell using the binary that's running, the LoRa basic station binary, but it doesn't have a full OS, so there is no shell that you can get into and try to run some commands. So the idea with the LoRa basic station protocol is that you want to be able to have full control of your gateway completely from the server side. So there are actually easier ways of doing it. Most of the questions regarding shell access are related to can I get system logs from the gateway? Can I remotely reboot the gateway? It's usually those cases. It's very rare that someone requires a generic shell to go into the gateway and do some manipulation there. It's mostly about system logs. Can I get what's the memory currently? What's the CPU usage? Stuff like that. So for this, once we have figured out the status message aspect of LoRa basic station, it's quite easy to, or depending on the system, of course, it would be quite easy to just pipe in those fields into a LoRa basic station message, which means that the gateway can periodically send you the uptime, memory, CPU, etc. And also you can also pipe some system logs if you need to, and you can send a command down to the LoRa basic station binary, depending on its privileges, to fetch some system messages and send it back to the network. And on some gateways or some systems where LoRa basic station is installed, you can also remotely reboot the gateway when you need to. That's also possible, but we don't. That's really a gateway by gateway basis, because each gateway has a different architecture. So we have to look at how that gateway's OS or its software is implemented, and then try to adapt the commands based on that. Okay, and another common question is the question on, so how do I connect my gateway to a private CUP server? That is also quite commonly asked. This is also possible because it's a basic station gateway. So the CUPS protocol has this concept of chaining CUP servers, which means that you always have a boot CUPS that's installed in the gateway, there's a credentials that's installed either via a new firmware update or when the gateway is manufactured in the plant. So in this case, so when the gateway connects, it always connects to first the boot CUPS, and you can externally tell the boot CUPS to allow the gateway to connect to a secondary CUPS. So this is how the whole concept of gateway claiming works, in the sense that the TTIG, when it starts up, it connects to a boot CUPS. The thing stack tells this boot CUPS what to do with the gateway. The gateway then connects to the thing stack. The process is the same. So if you have a separate CUPS server running on your own environment, or you have a CUPS server locally that you want to run some tests on, you have to tell the thing stack to forward this gateway to your new CUPS. And the process is quite similar to, as I told you, with the LNS movement. But at the moment, we don't have support for this in the console. It's only via the CLI. And once this webinar is over, on our documentation page, I will write a little post on how you can do this. So it requires a bit of CLI knowledge, but if you can get the CLI running and get the fields right, it's quite easy to do. So it's a CUPS transfer or a CUPS handover, which is a part of LoRa basic station protocol anyway. So you can set that up and do it yourself also. Okay, let's see if you have any more questions. Oh yeah, so there's a question about what is the boot CUPS server for a TT gateway? Is it TTN or is one of the manufacturers? So the boot CUPS is at the moment one from the original manufacturers. It's run it's maintained by Semtech, And so the thing is that a boot cups is not permanent in the sense that it was the cup server that was installed when the gateway was being produced. But if with a signed firmware update, the boot cups can be updated. So you can set a firmware update where you can also erase and replace the boot cup credentials. So we at the moment, the boot cups for the TTIG is the Semtech RGS. I think there's quite a few posts on forum about some people trying to figure out how to connect to the server, which is quite funny to look at. So it's the Semtech RGS or the router join service, which is the boot cups. And so that's what the TTIGs connect to when they start up. And the Think Stack manipulates the RGS to make this process easy, so that when all you have to do is do a claim, and the gateway can do all the magic in the background. So that's the boot cups that it uses. Nice. So let's see if there are any more questions. All right. So that seems to be about it. In case you have any more questions, please let me know. Otherwise, yeah, there are a couple of questions that I commonly get about getting to know where documentation is, and this is super important. That our forum moderators always have trouble with repeated questions and people asking the same questions on the same type of topics. Always head over to the thingsindustries.com/docs. That's where our documentation is. We have a beautiful search option there, so you can just go search for your keywords. You will get the pages. And if you don't find documentation, you can either ask on the forum, or you can also go to the github.com, the Things Industries, Lora one stack docs. That's our documentation page. So basically, the documentation that is seen in this link is sourced from a GitHub repository. So it's an open source repository, so you can contribute anything that you want to there also. If not, you can also create a request there, create a GitHub issue saying that this topic hasn't been documented, could you please do it? And somebody from the team will look at it and document it. So the idea is that to reduce the amount of effort, for the forum moderators, and also for us to keep asking the same questions. It's much easier if you can just go create a request, and we will let you know where the documentation is. If there's no documentation, we will always update it. So that's one thing you might need to be aware of. Yes. So the question is the claim authentication code the same as the password on the sticker? Yes, that's correct. So behind the gateway, there's the Wi-Fi PW thing, and it has an 8-character value, which is an alphanumeric value, and that the same password that you use to connect to the TTIC to then connect it to a Wi-Fi access point, that same 8-digit code is the same as the claim authentication code. So that's uniquely generated when the gateway gets manufactured. And that's printed on the back of the gateway, which you can then use to uniquely claim, or it's sort of a proof of ownership of that gateway. All right, so let's see if there are more questions. So that seems to be about it. And if anybody has any more questions, please let me know, or we can bring this to a close. And you're also feel free to ask questions that are not just related to TTIGs or basic station, but to the stack in general, and I will be able to answer them. All right, so there don't seem to be any more questions. Okay, then in that case, thank you very much for joining. And if you have any questions, please head over to the forum, create the forum post. We have amazing moderators who will help you out with at least identifying where your problem is. And as I said, if documentation is missing, please head over to our docs page and create an issue, and one of us will always take a look at it. Thanks.